Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 66 Books, where we use the Bible as a framework to discuss how to level up our lives using Israelite spirituality. As you can see, today's setting is a little bit different here today, and it's actually because I was inspired by one of you all. There was a comment left on one of the previous videos that I want to read here today, because it sort of frames today's topic as well. So it reads, a portion of it reads, "It's great to wake up early and take in the sounds of spring and give thanks to our Father. Gratitude is a must." So I decided to take some time to enjoy the spring weather. I love the warm weather, it just makes me more happier. And to use this time to really reflect on a point in my life that was really challenging, but ultimately I was able to overcome it by tapping into my spirituality and using it in ways that I had previously never really had done before. And so I want to share with you guys sort of the tips and tricks that I used to overcome that really hard period in my life and to ultimately find a path that was meant for me. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. Today's going to be a little bit more relaxed, but I hope you enjoy. But before we get started, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe. I want this to be interactive, so please feel free to be active in the comments as well, but we'll go ahead and dive right in. I always joke that I feel like I lived a pretty privileged life up until the last year of my college career, so my senior year. And what I mean by that is, for the majority of my life up until that moment, I felt like whatever I prayed about or I really needed in that moment, I would receive just like that. Whether it was a test, God of Israel, okay, I studied for this test, but I'm not feeling super prepared. Like, can I get an A on this test? Like, it would come through. Or God of Israel, I didn't prepare for this test, and I really want to do good because I know that grades matter. And all of a sudden, the test is printed out and it's canceled. Or any job that I wanted or things that I would try out for or achieve. Like, I felt like if I prayed about it, it would come like that. And so going into my senior year of college, which I want to talk about today, I just want to reflect on a time in my life where I felt really lost, because up until college, I felt like I had a defined path for me placed out. Throughout high school, middle school, I was always working, and everything that I was doing for the goal and purpose of getting into a good college, getting a good education so that I could advance my life. And so by the end of my college career, the question that of course naturally starts populating is, okay, you're about to go into the real world. What is it that you want to do with your life? What is the next move for you? What's your next pivot? And although, I didn't do horrible at college, I wasn't trash, like I still got good grades, I was still very involved. I'm always very honest in saying one of my regrets that I have about college is I felt like that I wasn't very focused when I went in. Some of the advice that I received as a freshman from upperclassmen, a lot of it was to, explore your options. This is a time to really see what you like and you want to commit to, so don't define yourself to a box, which I think is good in moderation. I think I took that to the extreme because I was involved in a lot of different clubs, whether it was environmental science, Black Student Alliance, like social justice internships for like policies, etc. Like, it was just, my interests were very spread out. And I feel like even though I had, my art minor and my science major, I was so busy exploring and trying out different things that I wasn't focused on the end goal, which is at the end of college, ultimately, you're going to choose a path, which is to either continue your education at a higher level or figure out what your next career path is, right? And I felt like that goal was like put on the back burner for me. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm exploring, I'm involved, I'm getting good grades, like something will open up for me. But a regret that I had was maybe if I had figured out what I was passionate about during that time I was there, being in the institution of college, you have so many resources and a wealth of knowledge and people that can really help you advance to not only your goals, but to also make it easier to get there. And I feel like because I wasn't aware of what I wanted to do afterwards and I wasn't focused, I wasn't able to tap into those resources as much as possible, which meant I had to work a little bit harder towards the end. But I say that to say is, I lived this privileged life, and coming to my senior year, I was sort of freaking out because I was like, okay, like I know I like art and marketing, like let me just try to apply there, but I just felt very lost because I wasn't sure. I just knew that I had to find a job, and I was focused on finding a job, but I felt very lost as to what job would be best for me. I felt very pressured because I'm not only juggling, having, research since it was my senior year and I needed to complete my major requirements, as well as just like working as a job. I was a resident advisor. I also worked in it was like housing as well, a conference services as well, like managing all these different things as well as graduation requirements, plus trying to find a job. It was extremely overwhelming for me, and I felt very lost. And I remember how I felt on my graduation day. I don't think I've ever really told anyone this, but I remember my graduation day, we were still in the whole craziness that was COVID, and so I could only invite 2 people to my college graduation. Like, it was nice that it was in person, but I remember feeling very sad at the end of it. And not because of the natural, like, oh my gosh, like we're leaving, my friends I won't see, like that was part of it, but it was I think like going through college, you always envision like your family there. Like I envisioned my branch, the Atlanta branch, my family, the people that supported me, like all being there celebrating with me, and it wasn't able to be. It was my parents, which like shout out to them, they're awesome, but it was like much smaller, right? So I was like missing that aspect of it, like the branch like surrounding me with that type of love. But 2, I just remember feeling very inadequate and insecure because I felt like there were all these people around me that, had already gotten their job offers to like these top companies to work in the country. There were these people that were going on to get their degrees at, the most prestigious colleges in the country, even more than the one we were already at. And I felt like all around me there were people that had their life figured out. And when I graduated, I had not received an offer for my job. I had been applying to jobs here and there, even met with a career coach, but nothing was pulling through. And so it left me in the state of where, like, what is my next step? And I felt a lot of fear because it was the first time in my life where I didn't have a clear path to follow. And I think that's really, really important to highlight because fear of the unknown can really cripple you if you don't know what to do with that fear. And I feel like it's something that isn't necessarily talked about a lot, especially when you are in maybe like an institution or a group of friends where everyone is like achieving and everyone is a high achiever and working towards success, and you are at a point in your life where you don't know what the next path is, you don't know where it is. It can make you feel insecure and inferior. So I remember my graduation day, I felt extremely sad and afraid because, like I mentioned before, it was the first time in my life I didn't know what I was doing. Throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, I knew that I wanted to get into a good college, and so everything that I did was always with a laser focus of getting into a good college. And I knew what the next step was for me, and the life was planned out, at least for the next 10 years since being a child. And so now it was like there's so much possibility. It wasn't exciting for me, it was scary. And what I appreciate about that moment is, I'm going to say something very controversial, and I hope that parents do not get upset with me when saying this, but I do want to say take it with a grain of salt. But I truly believe that unemployment is sometimes the best thing that can happen to a young person. And I say this because after I graduated, I didn't have a job that I was going to. I didn't have like a next step, like a next institution that I was going to be a part of. I was like literally at home trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I was still applying to different jobs, trying to see if something would come through. And I was like at home doing nothing. I didn't even have my license once I graduated. And so it meant that not only was I unemployed, but it meant that I was also stuck at home. But I say unemployment can be the best thing possible for a young person because it forced me to sit with myself. I think for a lot of people, when you are in an uncomfortable place where you are experiencing disappointment because maybe you didn't live up to the expectations that you had for yourself, it's very easy to divert and chase after distractions so that you don't have to feel that pain, so that you don't have to feel uncomfortable and acknowledge where you are at in life. But because, like I said, I didn't have a job, because I didn't have a car to even leave the premises of my house at the time, I had to sit with myself and some of the choices and decisions that I had made, or some of the regrets that I had. And I think that is so powerful because it's funny, like I went to work today, and on my way to work I was listening to one of my favorite like motivational speakers is the Wizard Liz on YouTube. She's Muslim, so there are some like conflicts with Israel, but the stuff that she says at the very core and basis are really great and powerful. But I remember she was saying, a lot of people don't want to take the time to self-reflect because it requires accountability. And sometimes accountability breeds guilt because you have to reckon with the ways in which you have failed yourself. And so that's what I appreciated about unemployment, is it forced me to reckon with the decisions I had made. It forced me to be uncomfortable so that I could start taking the steps that I needed to get comfortable, to find myself, and to push past the fear and to figure out the path when I felt so lost at the time. And one of the things that I realized in that self-reflection moment was that I felt like because I ended up at my dream college, and it was a very good college, the top ones in the state, it was, a great one country-wise as well. I felt like once I got to college, I had this like, oh, I've made it mentality. And because I had that mentality, I feel like it bred forth a mindset of mediocrity for me. It's not that I was out here failing things, guys, or like not involved. I was very involved on campus. I still did like leadership roles and things, but when it came to like my grades, and I think I've mentioned this before, like even just navigating college in general, as far as like figuring out what I wanted to do afterwards, I felt like because I had already gone to a good institution, I was like, oh, like I'm good, like I don't need to be the best. I don't have to be the top of the class because I'm already at a great institution. I can just, do good, do what interests me, and then figure it out afterwards. And I do regret that mindset. I do regret the fact that I wasn't laser focused when I went to college. I think I've mentioned this previously, but again, I just had a lot of people recommending that I explore my options and not put myself in a box once I get there. And I think that was good in moderation, right? It is very beneficial to know what you want to do when you're in the institution of school, because there are lots of resources available that you can tap into to further propel what you want to do in your passion, because you have access to people that maybe like the top in their profession or industry that could give you advice, like mentorship. It gives you access to resources. If you get certain fellowships and scholarships, that can be like a full paid ride to do research on something that you're passionate about that can further advance your career there. Like I just regretted that mindset of mediocrity that I had, of like, okay, like on paper things are looking good, but when I'm in the classroom, like I don't necessarily have to be the best, or I don't have to get 100% on every paper. Like I'm not saying strive for perfection, but I think I didn't strive for excellency. And so when I was sitting in my moment of self-employment, that is something that arose with me, was you got to make sure that from moving forward, we strive for excellency and don't just settle for, oh, I got into the door of this amazing place and now I can just chill and pass by. Like, especially because being an Israelite is quite very new. The Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries is quite a younger nation. I feel like we don't have the comfortability or leisure, if you will, to have a mindset of mediocrity. It's very important that we strive for excellence so that we can get in various places, whether that's high places, middle, in the community, whatever, so that we can advocate for ourselves and advance ourselves further as we continue to establish ourselves. So that was one thing that I learned in that uncomfortable space. But two, I had to ask myself the question of, are you prepared for your blessing? I had to realize, okay, Rachel, like, you've been praying throughout college. My senior year, I was praying for this blessing of getting a job, receiving guidance on my path. I feel lost. What do I do? You're not getting your prayer answered. You, like I said before, I was used to this, like, next day, things are happening for me. But now, almost a year had passed, and there was nothing. And so I had to turn the reflection not on, like, God of Israel, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you doing this? But more so, what is wrong with me? Where am I inadequate to where I am not ready to receive this blessing? And for me, that is really where things started to shift, and I was able to slowly start to find my way when I felt so lost. And so I actually want to read a psalm, Psalm 63, because even though I'm talking about my reflection period when I was unemployed, right? So after I graduated college, when I was in college, I was still praying for that guidance. And one of the Psalms that I received, I talked about this all the time because it was a literal sign for me that I received when I was praying for that. And in that space where I felt lost and I didn't know what I was going to do next or what my next move was, I remember I decided to do a prayer program. It was the new moon, so it was a new month on the Israelite calendar to Sabbath, so the 7th day. So I decided to do a prayer program, and sometimes with my prayer programs, I like to have a psalm to reflect on either through the duration of that, like, first 7 days, or for the month. And one of them that I chose was Psalm 63. And I remember it was either new moon or Sabbath. It's funny because I was looking at the journal entry when I wrote about this. I had just finished my prayer program, was on the phone talking to a brethren, and as we're, like, coming to an end, a close on our conversation, they're like, hey, by the way, I was reading the scripture this new moon or Sabbath, can't remember which it was, and they're like, I think you should read this psalm as well to reflect on it. And I remember my heart was, like, pounding, like, there's no way, like, they're not going to say this psalm, I think they're, and they said Psalm 63. So I want to read this psalm.
O God, thou art my God. Early will I seek thee. My soul thirsteth for thee. My flesh longeth for thee in a dry and thirsty land where no water is, to see thy power and thy glory, so as I have seen thee in the sanctuary. Because thy loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise thee. Thus will I bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips. When I remember thee upon my bed, and meditate on thee in the night watches, because thou hast been my help, therefore in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice. My soul followeth hard after thee, thy right hand upholdeth me. But those that seek my soul to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth. They shall fall by the sword, they shall be a portion for foxes. But the king shall rejoice in God. Every one that sweareth by him shall glory, but the mouth of them that speak lies shall be stopped.
You know what I love about this psalm, I just love, it's one of my favorites, but the first verse really stands out to me, where it says, my soul thirsteth for thee, my flesh longeth for thee in a dry and thirsty land where no water is. Like, what I interpreted and still do from that was, like, my guidance that I was receiving was, girl, you need to grow closer to God. You need to search after him. The only way you are going to get through this is to up your spirituality in new ways that you've never done before. And, like, you will rejoice, you will see glory. It even reads in verse 11, but the king shall rejoice in God. Everyone that sweareth by him shall glory. Like, this was such a psalm of strength for me and guidance. And from that, I was able to use my spirituality to figure out what my next step was. During my unemployment phase, there were basically, like, 2 things I start off with, and I would recommend for anyone that is feeling lost, that doesn't know what they want to do or what their next step is, do as well. So the first thing is prayer programs became way more consistent in my life, right? You don't always every new moon have to create a prayer program, but if you feel like you need it, if you feel moved to do so, that is a great opportunity for you to use timing. We know how special time is in the Israelite culture, right? To really help push and advance and give you that extra oomph you need to either receive guidance for your prayers or the answer to your prayers. So the first thing I started to do was more prayer programs more frequently. So the new moon Sabbath came, like I mentioned before, I was picking out a psalm to reflect on. One thing that I would also do is every new year, in addition to creating a vision board, sometimes vision boards don't do it for me because they're just pictures. I need something more tangible to like actually see the goals I'm trying to chase. Is I have like a Excel, it's like a spreadsheet on Google Docs, which basically has 4 different categories. I think it is. It's like I think it's Israel, personal, career, and sometimes it'll be like education and miscellaneous. And I'll have my goals set out there. And so the first thing I started to do, thinking about Psalm 63, like you're thirsting after the God of Israel. Like it's not like a God of Israel, I love you. I feel like I'm gonna pray today. No, it's like I'm starving for you. Like I need you. Like I'm in this tough point where I feel lost. I'm sitting at home. I have no job. I want a job, but I just don't know what's best for me. I'm still figuring it out. But like I also have goals in mind that I want to achieve, and I don't want to stay in this space of stagnation. I want to progress. What do I do? So you have to thirst after him. So I would do the prayer programs from new moon to Sabbath, and during those times, especially on new moons, I would pull up that Excel spreadsheet of my goals, and I would write out, like I would basically under the spreadsheet that I have in my Google Docs, I would have the Israelite months. So Abib, Sif, Sivan, right? I would have the month that we were in outlined, and I would create a checklist of all the things I needed to do to get done that month that would align with my goal. So for me, that was going to resume workshops. At the very basis, if I am still trying to figure out what I want to do for my post-grad career, I know at the end of the day, everyone's going to need a resume, so let me get my resume workshop. And thank God I did, because I was out here trying to be a fashionista and make mine all like pretty, and I was saving it on Canva, and I went to a resume workshop provided by my school, and they was like, yeah girl, if you're using a program like Canva, the system probably isn't even reading your resumes, and that's why you're not even getting called back. You need to do this in PDF. And I was like, oops, okay, maybe that's why. Like that helped. What else? I was going on LinkedIn as well, and I was networking. I recommend for anyone that is post-grad or even in college to really tap into your alumni network, because they are the ones that tend to be most responsive and most helpful. So if it was like I'm trying to think of what month it was, but say if it was like Sivan, I was doing my checklist, reach out to at least 3 people on LinkedIn and schedule phone chats with them to network, to see what is a day in their life like at their job, and is that something that I would like as well, but to also get general career advice. And when I tell you, I met some of the most helpful people that way. Like I do not sleep on networking, y'all. Like it grew my social skills so much, but like you get so much insight when you reach out to those people, and they're oftentimes so willing to help you. So that was another one. And it was also doing things. My second tip of advice for someone that is feeling lost, like they don't know what to do, is I was listening somewhere that, you know, our brains are programmed to do things. We're humans. Not a lot of things change over the centuries that we're here. And our brains tend to be wired for progress. And I remember I was listening to the person talking, they were saying, you know, like, think about some of the most richest people that have accomplished everything in life and they end up miserable. Like sometimes that can be linked to the fact that they've accomplished everything and now they feel like they've reached the new height, and now they're questioning, like, what's next? Like, I can't be in the state of not doing nothing. And a lot of human beings tend to be in that way. Like, a lot of times we want to feel like we are progressing towards a goal or taking the steps to move necessarily. And if you are lost and don't know how to reach your big goal, I highly recommend starting small, because it almost gives you like these little endorphin boosts. I hope I'm using that chemical correctly, but it gives you these like boosts of almost like self-confidence, like, okay, like maybe I haven't figured this big thing out, but at least I'm doing something. And for me, like I mentioned, I was a late bloomer. It was getting my darn driver's license, because when I was asking myself, like, are you prepared for this blessing, girl, remote job, it was ideal, but it was like, okay, but if not, you need to be able to get by. And so that became a task for me. And so I put on that to-do list for the month as well, was to look into driving school, get involved with driving school, etc. And that helped me, felt like I was progressing towards my overarching goal. I didn't know what it was, but I knew this was one thing that it would require, so let me work on that progress so I can feel better and not go into that depressive episode and sad episode. Because let's be honest, like, when you're stagnant, like I mentioned before, it's uncomfortable. You have to sit with yourself, and it's very easy for your mind and your spirit to go to low places. So you have to put barriers in place to protect that, both spiritually but also just navigating in your life. And so focusing on the small things is the way that you can do that as well. But I also want to touch on this idea of progressing as well. If you can't find anything little to progress towards your big goal, something that always needs help and work with is Israel. And so during my time of unemployment, it was also a question of me, okay, like, I have all this time here, I'm not doing anything right now, I'm searching for my big goal, but nothing's happening. Where can I get involved in Israel to feel like I'm progressing and contribute to the God of Israel, and to show him, like, almost like God of Israel, you see the work that I'm putting in now, and if you bless me with this, like this career, I will figure out the resources to put even more into the nation, was my proposition in my prayers. And you don't want to like pray like, oh God of Israel, like I'm gonna use my job to feed into the nation once I get it, when you could be doing it now. Like, doing it in the moment is like almost like insurance, you know what I'm saying? Like, if someone is already putting into the work, you're going to be more apt to believe that they will continue to put in that work at a greater level once you help them. And so that is sort of the mind frame I implore you to think about. But it was also just an expression of gratitude. Like, you also need to big up yourself on the small accomplishments, even if you are feeling lost. Like, I had to still show appreciation for the fact that I even did graduate on time, that I had a decent grade, that I came out with friends, that I was able to network, that I had to recognize the blessings even in this space where I felt so lost. And part of recognizing those blessings was me getting involved with the nation. And that was such a blessing, because by me getting involved in the nation, I was able to cultivate new talents. And I highlight that because I think when I look back on that period in my life, again, I don't feel like when I was initially praying for my job that I was ready for it. I was very burnt out with school. Like I said, I was involved in a lot of activities, had a packed schedule. I felt like, honestly, maybe I needed some time to rest before going into the workforce, just so that I didn't burn out as quickly. 2, I felt like because I was such an eager beaver to get a job offer, I would have compromised on a lot of things that I'm not willing to compromise on now. Like, the job that I would have been in would probably be an industry that I wasn't passionate about. I probably would have been willing to forego things like salary, benefits, flexibility, as well, just for the sake of a job. And being able to sit down and be by myself allowed me to do my research and figure out what my non-negotiables were for the job that I was searching for, and ultimately to get what I deserve and was worth. And I think the God of Israel, being our Father, can see when we deserve more than what we even see for ourselves. And I think my blessing was put off to the side for that. And then 3, I think I really needed to just sit down and work on my spirituality. Sometimes I wonder if we have moments in our life where things aren't going so well because we really need to take the time to build our spirituality up to new heights. Because sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't had that period of time, would I have gotten as connected to the God of Israel as I was? Like, the first time I ever fasted outside of prayer was during my unemployment time, because things were not working for me, right? It wasn't happening fast. So I was like, I had to look at all my different spiritual options and be like, okay, if this prayer thing isn't working, well, then we got to go on a prayer program. All right, it's another month has gone by, we're not receiving anything. Maybe we got to up the prayer program to a fast. And I honestly think that part of the reason why I didn't receive my blessing at that time as well is because I needed to grow more in my spirituality and my connectedness to the God of Israel and create almost a stronger trust with him. And it really did strengthen my relationship with him in ways that I had never experienced before. And for that, I feel blessed. And I say that to say to you is like, the one thing that would annoy me when I would speak to people on the phone when I was networking, looking for a job, is they would tell me to enjoy this period of unemployment as much as possible. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, how am I supposed to enjoy it? I can't leave the house. I don't even have a car. They didn't know that. But I was like, how am I supposed to enjoy it? Like, I'm not getting paid. I can't really go anywhere. Like, what do you mean? But again, during that time of unemployment, I was able to grow closer to the God of Israel. On my Sabbaths and new moons, again, we were still like in the midst of the pandemic, so some things were remote. I don't even think we were at the time the nation could meet in person. It was so refreshing to be able to go from like being at home, away at school, and sometimes, you know, you're at school all day on the Sabbath day, to like I could get my 7 times a day prayer, and I could pray 3 times a day at my leisure with no conflict. Like, that was a really nice benefit to enjoy. I enjoyed it because it forced me to sit with myself and learn more things about myself as well. What makes me feel productive? What makes me feel in low spirits? It allowed me to have the time to research, again, like what career path I would be passionate about. And so, again, I implore you, if you are feeling lost in this moment, try to use it as an opportunity. Change and flip your mindset to appreciate what you have now and maybe some of the benefits that can come. I know it sounds weird, benefits to being lost, but the benefits you have in that, okay, now you have the time to up your spirituality. Now you have the time to discover yourself a little bit more. Man, I was at school all the time, and of course you're learning when you're at college and you're away from home different things, but it was like when I really got to sit with myself alone with nothing to bother me, man, I learned what motivates me. I learned that connecting to nature and walking is very important to me, like just feeling better. I started to journal more, understanding the importance of gratitude. And I want to circle back to another thing about talents increasing. I was also able to learn new talents. I had purchased like an iPad a few years previously, and I wonder if any artists can relate. I'm very curious, but drawing on a paper is very different, to me at least, drawing digitally. And so there was a huge learning curve for me when I started going to digital art. I remember I was like tapping, we have our Misa here in the Atlanta branch here at Israel, and she's such an amazing artist. If you know, you know, like probably, honestly, she's probably one of my favorite artists. She is so good. And I remember I would text her like, girl, I'm gonna need you to show me how to use Procreate because I'm lost and I see you doing these videos and you're doing amazing. But I was like having such a learning curve. And I remember when I was unemployed, right, we would have, you know, the Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Dedication, Abib celebration videos. And because we were in the pandemic, we couldn't do it in person. So our nation's committees were asking for submissions. GAPIS was asking for submissions of like any sort of talent to uplift the God of Israel, to submit to those videos to show. And I was like, listen, I got all this time. Let me present an offering before my God as well to show my gratitude. And from that, I started to work on my digital art. And when I tell you, like, never before have I been able to create some of the art the way that I was able to create when I was doing those Israelite projects. It was amazing. And like now that is an extra talent that I have added on. Like I know how to do digital art because I took that time where I was feeling lost to also explore different interests within Israel to advance the nation, and I was able to gain something from that. And I know for a fact, like with school and the crazy work schedule, like even working now that I do art 10 times more less than I was doing before, and it was like that was a blessing in disguise. So again, if you're feeling lost, remember that you gotta shift your framework into thinking like, how can I use this time as an opportunity for self-discovery while I work towards progressing towards my goals. And so before I get into the tangible tips that I use to get my blessing, there's one more thing I want to highlight. And I think this is really good to share because I feel like I also have to remind myself of this as well, is something that was very powerful was the mindset that I had throughout all of this. And it was whenever my parents, and like big shout out to my parents, my family, the Atlanta branch, like friends, family, like so many people were so helpful during that time. Like I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate my parents for not creating added pressure on me when I was going through this period of feeling lost, because it's hard. Like people are hard enough on themselves. And typically when someone is going through a moment in their life where they are lost or they are not achieving goals that they have expected, I promise you they are aware of it. I promise you they are. And so having someone rail into you and berate you can be really discouraging. And so I so appreciate my aunties, my uncles, my elders, my parents for not adding more pressure onto me and instead helping me. They would send me job applications, encourage me, ask me how I was feeling. And going back to the mindset, I remember I would share this with my family members, especially my mom, through talks. I was like, I know the God of Israel, and I know it's not a matter of if I'm going to receive this blessing, it's just a matter of when. And so in the meantime, I've got to figure out what can I work on for myself to make that win happen. And man, sometimes I feel like I don't even keep that mentality for some of the goals that I'm working to now. Like for some reason, I think it's because I was like, listen, everybody in the world, like you got to get a job. Like, so there's no way I'm not going to have a job. So I know I'm going to be blessed. It's just, when is it going to be blessed? And like, that's the mindset that I had. And that's the mindset that truly encouraged me. And it's like a reminder to not only you, my viewers, but also myself, like we got to change our mentality sometimes about the goals that we have. And something I've been trying to create for me as well, a mentality of like, I'm gonna be arrogant when it comes to my God and his power. And I think we as Israelites need to be arrogant like the way David was, and some will also say brave as well, and that like, nah, like when it comes to my God, things can happen and will happen for me. And having that mentality is so encouraging when you're going through a process where you're trying to find your way. When it came to preparing for my blessing, I told you it was questions of things like, okay, what can I do when it comes to like getting my driver's license? What can I do as far as finding my path and networking with other people? So through my networking and research, I figured out that I was very interested in the tech industry. I loved the innovation of it, the way that they treated their employees. It was a long-standing, like long-lasting career. So I was like, this is what I want to go into. Let me pursue that. And so when it came to my interviews and preparing, I had to, again, up my spirituality. And these are a couple of ways that I did it. So we talk about the importance of music. Music sets the tone and the environment so that you can receive the spiritual assistance that you need to accomplish things. And so remembering that whenever I would like get ready and get dressed for my interviews, I would play Israelite music as I was getting ready to help set the tone and the environment. I remember one of the songs that I always went back to, I would listen to I Believe in You, because that song just really resonated with me. I would start with that and then let the playlist go. Shout out to Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, IsraeliteNation.com's music playlist. That always comes in the clutch for me, but I would pray that to set the environment. Another one, I feel like this is very like kind of like, of course, I would pray right before my interview. I would always ask God of Israel if it's in thine will, allow me to get this job. And I would always pray that the interview would be a great experience. You know, I was going with this mindset of every interview that I have is just one step closer to the offer. It's one step closer to the job offer. And so you have to have that mentality. So I would pray right before the interview, and I was like, regardless of what happens, I pray that if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, but can you still allow this to be a great experience for me, whether I need to learn something new about what I can improve, or an experience of like confidence of like, I just got this. It's just a matter of finding the right one. Another thing, in addition to praying right before, is we got to remember the power of togetherness and community. And I just want to major shout out again my aunties and my parents, because one thing I would also do, and my family as well, is whenever I found out my interview time and who my interviewers were, I would ask for my family, my aunts, if they were available to pray during my interview. So again, I'm receiving that spiritual assistance. While I am literally interviewing on the phone, they are praying for me so that I can receive that guidance to do well. And then another thing that I did as well, as I mentioned this before, I realized I needed to step up my spirituality. And so I also fasted. I believe I fasted 2 times outside of Day of Atonement, and I used that time to really ask the God of Israel for what I want. So during those fasting periods, I had done my work and my research. And so again, when it comes to like fasting and prayer programs, I really implore you to also get guidance from your leadership, your brethren, on how you can sort of up the ante. But I made sure that I did my research, so I networked with people, and through my networking I can even see the blessing now, because from that unemployment period of networking, I was able to meet my mentor, who was one of the most helpful people ever. But through that networking, I realized I wanted to be in the tech space. I got an idea of salary ranges, so I could know what my worth was in the field. And I was even able to see the ways in which being in that industry and finding my career path, or at least the next step, how it could benefit Israel. One of the biggest things that I loved about tech was this idea of social innovation as well, and the commitment that a lot of them have to giving back to the community. And so when I was doing my fasting programs, the work, the work had been put through to allow me to be specific about my prayer. And then what I would also do during my fasting program, so you have, prayer, the scriptures you're focusing on. I also took time to work on things for Israel. A lot of, like I mentioned before, my art developed. I would use that time to focus on like the offerings I wanted to present before the God of Israel. So some of those art submissions, that imagery, that work I would do during fasting. And what's so cool about that as well is, I don't know if any artists relate, but sometimes you have roadblocks when you're doing art. I don't know about my drawers, but there are some days where I see the vision in my head and I'm drawing it on paper, but I can't get it out, and I'm erasing. It takes me like 5-10 times to try. And there are other days when you are really inspired, and literally what is in your head just flows off of the paper like that. And what was so interesting is both times I fasted, that happened for me. And I was able to complete like digital art projects at a more like advanced level than I was ever able to before. And it just makes me think, like, what about our spirituality? Like, what if you set up the environment in a positive spiritual way to like see the impacts that it can have on your talents? Because I know for me, some of the best artwork that I made was when, like, right after I prayed, or during those fasting programs as well. But those main things, those tips and tricks using my spirituality really helped me to gain my blessing and to receive guidance. And so, as I mentioned before, I received my mentorship from that. During my unemployment period, I figured out what direction I wanted to go in as far as the next step for my career, at least what industry and path I wanted to be in. But also, my trust for the God of Israel was able to increase because of that experience and how it all ended. And so I do want to read this next psalm because it's one of my favorite psalms. It's one that I garner empowerment from. It means a lot to me because of the time in which I read it. And two, it really showcases how amazing the God of Israel is, why we should trust for him, and it ties into my blessing.
Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, Where is now their God? But our God is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not, neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them. So is every one that trusteth in them. O Israel, trust thou in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. O house of Aaron, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. Ye that fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. The Lord hath been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless them that fear the Lord, both small and great. The Lord shall increase you more and more, you and your children. Ye are blessed of the Lord, which made heaven and earth. The heaven, even the heavens, are the Lord's, but the earth hath he given to the children of men. The dead praise not the Lord, neither any that go down into silence. But we will bless the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. Praise the Lord.
So again, I love this psalm because it's the ultimate fire starter psalm. It's like, girl, don't be, like I mentioned before, I was very insecure at the beginning of the process, right? If we look back to when I first graduated, I was feeling inferior. I was looking around and I was seeing people be successful and I was at a loss. And this psalm just reminds me, do you know who your God is? And do you know who their God is? Girl, trust the process. Trust in your God. And the ending part of this psalm just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy and comfort inside. And it says, ye that fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is your help and your shield. And when it starts to say listen, he will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless them that fear him, both great and small. No matter who you are, if you fear him and follow his laws, statutes, and commandments, he will bless you. That mindset I was saying, when you go after your goals with the God of Israel on your side, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I say that to say, my blessing just happened so beautifully. I talked about the importance of timing. So again, I graduated. It was towards the beginning of the year, and I received my blessing at the beginning of the following year. So again, it took a long time, but I remember it was probably in Adar I got my first offer. So again, guys, this is months of interviewing, networking, trying to figure out. And I remember through my interview process, I got a lot of advice basically saying the tech industry opens up spaces in that January, February time, so be ready there. So I had my first interview. It wasn't even with a tech job. I was opening myself up to marketing because I had a creative side as well. And I got my first offering as, I want to say it was a sales marketing associate. And I was excited. I felt blessed. It wasn't exactly what I had prayed for. There's a certain, salary, industry, everything that I was looking forward to. But I was okay, not everything is going to be perfect, right? Sometimes you have to take a stepping stone to get where you want to be. And maybe this is the door end, because I was told the tech space is a hard space to get into. So I was let's go. And then God of Israel started doing his thing. So I started interviewing, I got that job, and then come to find out that the sales firm was being acquired by a big tech company known in the country. And so I'm what? Anyone that knows, again, sometimes the tech space has huge barriers. So sometimes an acquisition is a really great way for you to get into that industry without maybe having to go through 4 difficult rounds of interview processes. You may only do 3 because of the company that you were at before's processes. So I was we're gonna get the big name on the resume without even had to jump the hoops. So that was the first step. It was the company that I got my position in was acquired in the tech space. So I was officially a part of the tech space and sales and marketing. It was a great position to be in. And then something else that was helping me a little bit on the side is, as I was onboarding for that first job, another job from a very well-known tech company that had raving reviews, great place to work with, great benefits, like people always saying they love to work there as well, was accepted my resume, was like, let's go through some interview rounds to see if you're, good fit for this role. And so I had the first job that I was working in the tech space, getting my money and like starting to really get settled down and like feel progressed, like I'm working towards my goals. And as I'm doing this, I'm also on the side interviewing for the next one. And I ended up getting the job, and it was such a blessing, because when I tell you, the job was every single thing I prayed for and more. It was exactly that. Every single thing that I had on my list, I was blessed with, and it came at the very end of a bid. And I just remember feeling so grateful and so blessed once that job offer came through, because again, it's like it was a culmination of like 2+ years for me to get to that point. But I can honestly say that the wait was worth it. And I say that to say it's just very important. Like, I want to say mindset and spirituality is like the key to navigating a time when you don't know what your next step is, when you're feeling lost, and when you're feeling you didn't achieve. You have to go in with the mindset of, this is just a moment. It does not determine everything that is going to happen in my life. And you also have to be brave enough to question yourself and to ask yourself, where am I lacking so that I can get to where I want to get to? And when I tell you the God of Israel will bless you, he truly will. But one thing that I feel like I learned from that experience as well is, like I said, my trust increased with him. I think sometimes we go through very hard moments and you're told, okay, like, just pray on it, girl, or like, go fast, like, go to the altar. And like, I don't know what it is, but like sometimes it doesn't feel as like applicable. It's like, no guys, like, I'm going through this really hard time, like I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to even articulate it now. But I guess what I want to say is, it doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to try. I think sometimes we like run towards like, oh, like, I need to grind, like, I need to get my life together, like, let me like network, let me like start applying to jobs, and I'll pray a little bit. Like, we prioritize the steps it takes to get there without realizing, like, again, how much more amazing and maybe even easier we could get to our goals if we turn to prayer. And so I always just implore you to just try it. Try praying, try fasting, and see if it works. Because for me, trying it, I started to learn more about myself. I started to learn more about my God and how he likes to work. I learned to trust the God of Israel, so that when I came into new challenges, even after receiving that blessing, even now today in my life, I know exactly what I can do to feel better, to find myself, to ground myself, and to achieve the things that I need to achieve. But what I want to leave with you all here as well is some advice that I know I probably really needed to hear when I was in that space of not knowing what was next for me. And I'll even name it that space of fear. Fear was prioritizing me, and I was leading with a life of fear. Some advice that would have helped me is, number one, fear is normal. It is completely normal to feel scared because you don't know what's next. But please remember, courage does not happen by itself. Courage is feeling that fear and deciding to go ahead and move forward regardless. So accept the fact that this time is scary for you and you feel fear now, but know that you still have the power to make even like small steps now that will improve your life. 2, please do not worry about what other people are doing, okay? Everyone has their own life journey. Everyone has their own path. You are you for a reason. You live in your body. You have your experiences for a reason. So please do not discount yourself and talk negatively to yourself or feel inferior, because it's all about timing, baby. If you put in that work, and you grow closer and you use your spirituality to ground yourself and use this time even to learn more about yourself and explore. But just remember, everyone has their own path and yours is different for a reason. And I am so thankful now in hindsight for the journey that I had, because again, it allowed me to have a resting period from work to from school to work, from graduating, so that I could rejuvenate from all that is 4 years of college. It allowed me to learn new skills that I've even been able to do side hustles and some freelance work as well. It allowed me to expand my spirituality to where I know what to do when I feel anxious, when I feel lost, when I don't know what to do. I have a game plan that I can go to because I took that time to learn myself. So just remember that you have your own path and it will work out in the end as long as you are consistent. Something I'm learning recently is it's not necessarily about perfection in a lot of cases. It's about consistency and what's in your heart's desire to do good. And so as long as you are consistently working towards your goal and keeping a strong and positive mindset, you will be okay. You will be okay. And remember, it's normal. It's completely normal to not have everything figured out. Even though I'm in a really nice and comfortable place now, when we're comfortable, we don't grow. It's when we get uncomfortable that we're able to propel ourselves through life further. And then finally, I want you to remember to not forget your community. My brethren were so helpful in my process of figuring out what I wanted to do. They didn't add any extra stress. They were really motivating for me. Like I mentioned before, they even prayed for me. So don't let your shame make you push people away. Don't let your shame make you feel like you're alone, because I'm telling you, a lot of us have experienced similar and maybe even worse experiences than what you're going through. So don't forget that. But I appreciate you all listening here today. I would love in the comments if you could even share some of the tips and tricks you've used in your life when you didn't know what your next step was, or you were feeling very lost or overwhelmed. Some of the things that you've done to sort of help cope with that as well. So again, we can all share our wealth of knowledge in our community. Today was a more relaxed day, a little less structured than I normally am, but I hope you were able to take away at least one thing from this. If you are enjoying this content, I please do ask that you like or leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and as always, please don't forget to tune in to all of the amazing content that we have here on this channel. Every Friday, we have Friday night Bible studies that occur at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, so be sure to tune in then. We also have Saturday messages, which occur at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then also be sure to tune in every other week to 5-5 for the Youth from the Youth podcast that occurs on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. It was such a pleasure with y'all hanging out today. I so enjoyed talking to you. And with that, I bid you peace.